Did ChatGPT just help me figure this case out? Let me show you something. Do not scroll away. I had ChatGPT design this diagram below. And what the diagram shows you is the void between these four people right here. You see, all five people. There's a void. Everybody's avoiding something on the floor right there. Why are they not? That's the largest space on the entire boat. Why is nobody standing in the biggest area of the boat? Why is everybody off to the side? If you look at the diagram, the red part shows Nolan's body. And if you look at the dude in the back, in the orange, I asked Google to tell me where that bilge pump is. And that's what he's doing in the back. He's over there messing with that bilge pump. And Wyatt right here is on the phone. Now listen to what I learned. Now, when Wyatt was on that phone call with the CTO company on the stress call, he says that the lady asked him, what is your GPS coordinates? Wyatt says, let me go look. So he had to have been over here with all the commotion going on while he's over here messing with that bilge pump. Wyatt was over here and he left from over here to go over here to check the coordinates. As you can see, he's on the phone right there where the coordinates is. And if you look at the diagram, you can literally see where Nolan's body could possibly be in this picture where you can't see it. Because I had them tell me what all of this means, what the space is called, and everything. So that space definitely can hold Nolan's body. And as you can see here, what the fuck are they avoiding? Why are they not standing right there? They're avoiding something. There's a whole void in between all these people. And that diagram shows you what's really going on in this picture.
Nolan Wells' case seems to be taking a backwards paddle. That's right. All of a sudden, a new witness have come forward. And what she had to say takes us back to the beginning. And we're about to get into it. But before we get into it, I need you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you're alerted the next time I upload a new video. Remember, we talked about Katie in the beginning. This witness is bringing information that just may blow your mind. Let's talk about it. In the beginning of the Nolan Wells case, Warren sat down with Officer Tatum and stated that Nolan stayed back on the island with Katie. Then later on, more information came out stating that there was an altercation on the island, but the boys swore that that was not Nolan. Now we have a witness coming out and stating that she saw Nolan Wells get into an altercation over his phone on the island. Thanks to Secret Service Sam, he gave us an update regarding this. Take a look at this clip.
I have not spoken publicly about this before, but I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells from a boat nearby. What I saw has stayed with me, and I believe it's important information. I have provided or intend to provide my account to the appropriate investigators because Nolan's family deserves the truth. Out of respect for the ongoing investigation, I won't speculate beyond what I personally observed. While I was on the boat near the area, I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells and several other individuals. I saw what appeared to be an argument that escalated after there was a dispute involving Nolan's phone. I heard Nolan yelling for his phone to be returned. The argument continued after the group reached shore, and I observed a physical fight involving Nolan and multiple people. I also observed a young woman telling them to stop. At that point, I left the area because the situation had appeared to be getting worse. I did not remain long enough to witness what happened afterward. Everything beyond what I personally observed would be speculation, so I cannot honestly say what occurred after I left. Then she said she messaged one of the individuals that she saw, hey, I just want to say I was a passenger on another boat and I saw the argument between you guys and we'll go to the police with this information. I also have video footage. My husband doesn't show much, but it shows the argument that was taken and how you guys were upset at Nolan because of the young lady.
Could this account be correct and accurate? That's what we need to find out. But remember, we had the attorney make a statement and say that someone saw Nolan Wells in an altercation at approximately 6 p.m. and that was after the boys had left. Now, the timeline on this altercation that the new witness is stating, or is this one of the witnesses? We don't know the timeline because she didn't give it in this quote unquote confession, I want to say. But nevertheless, they wanted to say Nolan Wells wasn't involved in that altercation. However, we had other statements come out and said Nolan Wells was involved and it was over the phone and it was regarding Katie. And all of a sudden, Katie disappeared. Now we have lion-ass Brandon Tatum sitting down with Nancy Grace, giving a whole different account. This man is going to hell with gasoline draws on. But listen to what he had to say on Nancy Grace yesterday.
Partier at Horn Island, that is significant. It could prove or disprove your friend's timeline.
Well, Nancy, I think that it's a big obstacle to climb here because I've never heard of this altercation whatsoever. Nobody that I've talked to have alluded that this altercation was real. And also Katie, whom I saw her text messages, she didn't even say this altercation occurred. What I will say is that if I was an investigator in this investigation, I want to hear that. I want to be able to compare that information to other things that we may have or other witness statements. But I don't think it's significant because it doesn't show if Nolan Wells was actually killed in that altercation. She's claiming that there was an altercation between him arguing with somebody else. There was a potential fight, but that doesn't get me to how did he drown? How did he get in the water? And how did he not recover and come home to his family? So I would take that into consideration. I would compare that to the other interviews that I've done, but I don't think it's significant whatsoever. However, I would be incredibly skeptical because there's no other statements that I've heard from anybody that comes even close to an altercation with Nolan Wells and others over a girl.
Now, we all know Officer Tatum is a big liar because he's going to hell with gasoline draws on, okay? But either he's trying to save face, covering for the boys, or being paid to lie. We all know, or speculations is out there that he's in some type of arrangement because you see his bourbon sitting behind the attorney and all of that extra stuff. So we know he's tied into these people. But the clip I'm about to show you, this man just sat there and told Nancy Grace he'd never heard of it. But here is a clip of this man stating that someone DM'd him this very conversation that we just heard. And he didn't know the time. Then he started talking about 6 p.m. How you go from you don't know the time that they saw this, but it was at 6 p.m. in the end. This man, this whole case, this cover up is so unreal. But we all know why. Take a look at this clip.
Received a DM from someone DMing another person. Now, I'm trying to leave these names out because I want to not mess this investigation up. I think law enforcement already have this. That alluded to the fact that, and I messaged this person because I want to talk directly to the person that I saw the DM from. And we haven't talked to this person yet. But the person said in the DM to another kid that is associated, not any of the kids that I interviewed to talk to, but that could be associated to some degree, that knew Nolan, that this person wrote a message saying, me and my husband saw you arguing with Nolan, and to the effect of you're going to spend the rest of your life in prison. Now, the person did not say they saw a physical altercation. The person did not say what time they saw Nolan and this other person getting into an argument. Now, this is after Warren, their boat left. This may be somewhere around a little bit before 6. What I'm thinking at this point, with all that has been said, is that somebody knows exactly what happened to Nolan, or they saw him right before he died. I am not convinced that Nolan was just out there and drowned.
The unsurmountable amount of cover-up in this case shows us, proves nothing but guilt surrounding those boys, in my opinion. This is absolutely ridiculous how they're stringing along these parents who just wants answers. The DA constantly trying to flip the script when she's unable to, because it always come back to backfire. She's debunked every time. No one should be above the law. This here shows us proof that these people think they're above the law, in my opinion. Nolan Wells' case needs justice. Drop down in the comments and let me know how you feel about this new witness that have come forward in the Nolan Wells case.
That witness account of an altercation has been live on the internet for hours now. No name behind it, no police report anybody can point to that backs it up. Just someone out there describing a fight over a phone with enough specific detail that scrolling right past it is genuinely difficult to do. And that right there is the core issue, isn't it? Because when an anonymous claim comes loaded with that kind of detail, it puts everybody in an impossible position. Take it at full face value and you're constructing a theory on a foundation you cannot verify, cannot challenge directly, and cannot even confirm came from someone who was physically present. Reject it outright and you risk discarding the single account that might actually be closest to what really happened out there. So which way do you go? Honestly, I'm not there yet. And after 6 weeks of this case, nobody carrying a badge has gotten there either. Nolan Wells was 18 years old. He headed out to Horn Island on the 4th of July, alongside a group of friends he'd grown up with. 48 hours later, he was dead. And from that point forward, this entire case has operated almost exclusively on secondhand information, timelines that don't match each other, and a state autopsy report that nobody outside of a secured office has laid eyes on. Every fresh claim that comes to the surface gets handed a verdict before a single person has held it up against anything verifiable. That changes tonight. We're taking this altercation claim and every theory that's been stacked on top of it, and we're putting them directly in front of two people who make their living stress testing exactly this kind of claim. One of them has personal connections to people close to this case. The other has spent his entire career determining what a body is actually capable of telling you and what it isn't. And this is our starting point. Not with what anyone believes went down on that island. We start with what a physical fight actually leaves on a human body, and whether Nolan Wells' body reflects any of that at all.
Joining me is Brandon Tatum, former police officer, Tucson, now star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube, who famously has interviewed the acquaintances who all say they had nothing to do with it. Let's just put that out there. He's interviewed them extensively. I want to talk about not what you want to talk about, Brandon Tatum, which is they had nothing to do with this, because I met them and I believe them. So noted. Can we talk about a potential witness to an altercation? And she seems to suggest it was over Katie. Why? Don't know what the altercation was. Maybe it was, hey, leave her alone and get on the boat. Or leave her alone, she's my girlfriend. Or it could be anything. But if there is a witness placing Nolan seemingly in the water, I can't tell that, but having an argument with another person, a partier at Horn Island, that is significant. It could prove or disprove your friend's timeline.
Well, Nancy, I think that it's a big obstacle to climb here because I've never heard of this altercation whatsoever. Nobody that I've talked to have alluded that this altercation was real. And also Katie, whom I saw her text messages, she didn't even say this altercation occurred. What I will say is that if I was an investigator in this investigation, I want to hear that. I want to be able to compare that information to other things that we may have or other witness statements. But I don't think it's significant because it doesn't show if Nolan Wells was actually killed in that altercation. She's claiming that there was an altercation between him arguing with somebody else. There was a potential fight, but that doesn't get me to how did he drown? How did he get in the water? And how did he not recover and come home to his family? So I would take that into consideration. I would compare that to the other interviews that I've done, but I don't think it's significant whatsoever. However, I would be incredibly skeptical because there's no other statements that I've heard from anybody that comes even close to an altercation with Nolan Wells and others over a girl.
Number one, he's dead shortly after an alleged altercation with another male. We think over a woman. See, in my world, I put together both circumstantial and direct evidence. Direct evidence would be, for instance, DNA or a fingerprint. Circumstantial evidence is the timing of the alleged altercation and his death. Right?
Nancy,
it's hard for me to believe that there's some kind of altercation on Horn Island just before he dies, and they were not connected. That's hard for me to believe that.
Well, Nancy, she's not saying he lost the fight. She's not saying that he got beat up. If you look at the autopsy, there's no clear signs of blunt force trauma to his face or any of the vital areas that could kill him. So it doesn't appear that there's any indication that he lost a fight, that there was enough trauma in this particular fight that would lead to his death. And when you look at the autopsy, there is no blunt force trauma to his face. There is no lacerations or damages to the back of his head. This is redness that was underneath the skin.
Oh, wait, are you looking at the screen? Because I'm looking at a big red mark on the back of his head.
Yeah, but this is underneath the skin. This is not a big red gash that's in the back of his head, which would be consistent with blunt force trauma. This is something that occurred underneath the skin that could have been from pooling of blood after his death due to,
Okay, I need to explain something.
I'll let the experts talk about specifics, but it doesn't appear that.
Okay, let's do that. But I want everyone to understand why Officer Tatum is here. Officer Tatum and Philip Dubé and others on our panel tonight are taking a particular side, right? It's called cross-examination, and it is similar to what happens in court. A theory emerges, a line of questioning emerges, and the other side tests it with fire under cross-examination. And then, hopefully, you get to the truth. Right now, we're talking about an alleged eyewitness to an altercation just before Nolan Wells is dead. If she has not handed this over to the police, it doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. But Tatum has a good idea, and that is, let's let an expert discuss it. To Joseph Scott Morgan, death investigator, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University. You can see him now on a hit podcast. It's on YouTube, Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Joe Scott, if there had been not a blunt force trauma that Officer Tatum is describing, but a fist fight, if there had been a fist fight, plus body in water for multiple days, body decomposition, would you expect to see red marks on the hands at that juncture, on the face? What would you expect if there had been a fisticuffs?
Yeah, you would see, well, first off, above discolored areas, like consistent with contusions. If there are facial strikes or just body blows, you can actually see abraded areas over the surface of his fingers, and these are very subtle sometimes. And if there is decomposition, which we believe there is, particularly per the second autopsy that was performed, he didn't make note of this. And can I go one more step with this? And this is kind of graphic, but people need to understand this. This physician that did the second autopsy actually did what's referred to as a coronal sectioning of the face. So there were multiple incisions made into Nolan's face in this autopsy, this second autopsy, and this guy didn't see anything. He didn't see anything that was of import, relative or indicative of blunt force trauma. And I would think that if there was contact, particularly if he's fighting a group of people, these sorts of things, you're going to have injuries probably on the leading edges, or what we refer to as the blade of the arm right here on the forearm, the back of the hands, the knuckles as points of contact. And certainly if there's facial strikes going on with him, which we find with blunt force trauma many times with fisticuffs, as you say, you'll see these strikes, you'll see marks on the face. There's nothing to indicate that in the second autopsy. Now, what the state has, I don't know, but I do know this. I know they're saying they're done with the autopsy and that it's complete, which means the gross findings in the autopsy room, the tox, the histology, that means that autopsy report is complete. They just hadn't released their findings yet.
And speaking of that, Joe Scott Morgan, I've heard the same, that the autopsy is complete.
Yeah.
There are reports that there is no cocaine in Nolan's system. That's uncorroborated reports,
Okay.
but a good source. No cocaine in the system.
Yeah.
Joe Scott, when the body has been in the elements, such as the water, for that long, how can I confirm if he had been drinking or not?
Oh, you can still pull a BA, blood alcohol, or blood ethanol level, as it's referred to. And again, Nancy, we're not talking about someone that has been down for weeks and weeks. We can still do the BA, and it can come from urine, blood. We can still draw urine and find it pretty effectively. You'll have what's referred to as qualitative. We've talked about this before, and I know you understand that, but so our friends understand. You have a qualitative amount, which they say, yes, it is present. And then you have a quantitative amount where they do the measurement of the BAC, the blood alcohol content. Just think about DWI, DUI, wherever you're from, those levels. And then we get up to those lethal levels. That's really what I'm interested in relative. And yeah, I'm interested in any of the other toxicological findings you might have relative to anything illicit or illicit drugs, but particularly with alcohol, because that has been kind of this thing that has been said over and over and over again. Well, let me see it. I want to know what the blood alcohol level was like. And historically, I would like to know what his level of experience has been with alcohol. As you well know, because of cases you've worked on in the past, Nancy, if you're a lightweight, if you've never had anything to drink and you start taking on copious amounts of alcohol, and you're kind of a neophyte in this area, it can have very, very lethal outcomes.
Let me understand. Joe Scott Morgan joining us, star of Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan on YouTube and Death Investigator. When I'm asking you, even if the body has been in the elements for a period of days, can I still get a blood alcohol? Maybe not from urine, but you certainly can't do a blow test. But can you take human tissue from one of the organs and extract a blood alcohol from human tissue?
No, it'd be very difficult. Generally, the liver is the best candidate. We'll spin that down. We'll take a section of it, spin it down, and liquefy it. But again, I submit to you, Nancy, that he has not been down long enough to compromise the ability to get at least a quantitative amount. Yeah, to get a BA.
So this is where the science actually deposits us. A forensic pathologist can extract a blood alcohol level from tissue that spent 2 days underwater. That's not a point of contention. It's established procedure. What remains genuinely unresolved is a harder question entirely. Whether the marks found on Nolan's body can actually distinguish between injuries caused by a physical confrontation and injuries caused by a body being driven against water and rock for 48 hours. Those two things can produce results that are nearly impossible to separate. Nobody sitting on that panel claimed to have the second autopsy report in their hands. Nobody claimed to know what it specifically documents about bruising patterns, the window of injury, or the official cause of death. So if the physical evidence isn't capable of resolving this yet, in either direction, what does that actually leave? Witnesses. Whatever the people who were on that island are prepared to say out loud, and whether anybody is willing to take their word for it when they do. That's precisely where this conversation pivots next, and it deteriorates quickly, because that same anonymous account we started with tonight reads very differently when you put it under direct scrutiny than it does when it's circulating as a viral post. Sit with this question for a moment. If you were standing there and you watched something that serious happen to another person, why would a comment section be the first place you ever said so? Why not a police station? Does that point to fear? To genuine uncertainty about what they actually witnessed? Or does it suggest something else, something that isn't quite as sympathetic? The panel is split on that tonight. And I'll be straight with you, so am I. And right in the middle of that disagreement still running hot, something else lands directly into the conversation. A claim that this case has quietly been reclassified as a criminal investigation. No named source, credited to some unnamed insider, stated on live television with the confidence of something already confirmed. One member of this panel finally says what everyone else has been dancing around. That is not evidence. That is a rumor that has dressed itself up to look like evidence. So now we're sitting with two things that have been circulating as established fact and maybe neither. An eyewitness account with no way to verify it, and a criminal investigation that no official source has gone on record to confirm, both moving fast tonight, both being received by different audiences as though the matter is already closed. Stay with me, because that's about to get dismantled piece by piece.
Philip Dubé joining me, a veteran trial lawyer, defense attorney out of the LA jurisdiction. I'm not quite sure why you're so focused on who had been drinking. Let's take a look at the video. Let me answer that for you. Everybody was drinking. Okay, everybody had a snootful. So, even someone drinking can see an altercation, Dubé.
No, of course you can. I can see that crowd of people out there. It was a bustling, hot 4th of July afternoon. But who's to say that the people that she saw included Nolan Wells? And that's why you got to get into her ability to perceive and recollect being impacted by intoxicants such as alcohol. I would want to know if she had imbibed. I really would. Not to mention, the autopsy findings thus far do not reflect any type of physical insults or injury to his body. At most, what you have are signs.
I'm asking you about your fixation on the witness having been drinking. Joe Scott Morgan has already addressed the body. I'm talking to you about the alleged witness.
Yeah. If she had in fact been drinking, I do believe, unless they really have a video showing him in HD quality, showing that he was in a fight, then I would call her ability to perceive, recollect, and even state that there was an altercation going on in her presence.
You know, Brandon Tatum joining us, Officer Tatum on YouTube. I've cross-examined a lot of witnesses, and I cross-examined them exactly on that. How far away were you? Did you know the target? Were you familiar with them? Was your vision obstructed by anything? Were you wearing glasses? Were you wearing sunglasses? What time of the day? I mean, I could go on and on and on. But unless you have a nun, a priest, or a virgin on the stand, or maybe Angel Gabriel might come down and testify, you have to take your witness as you find them. And I'm sure you've had a lot of drunk witnesses in Tucson to everything from a bar fight to a murder to a dope deal. Look, I'd say a good 50% of witnesses were drunk at one time or the other. That doesn't mean they didn't see what they saw.
Well, from a law enforcement perspective, you know, this is not cross-examination on the stand. This is us, what I would deal with a witness is right on the scene. And I'm not too concerned of whether the person is drunk or not. I'm not going to test their blood alcohol level on the scene. I want to know specifically, what did you see? What are the identifying markers that you have to say that this is Nolan? If the person can describe them, maybe we'll do a show up. If we have like a video or a picture or something, we can show them and say, hey, does this match the person you think that was here? Then we'll have a good perspective. But there is a challenge here, because you do have to identify him. You can't just say it was a black man out there with curly hair and I think it was Nolan. You're going to have some clear identifying markers that you know this is Nolan, and then you have to identify the people he was fighting with and the girl. And I think this person is going to have a big challenge. I saw this text message. We reached out to the girl on her social media. She never responded to us. I don't know if she ever really sent it in to the police, but it is problematic, in my opinion, if she hasn't. If you're going to say somebody is going to spend time in jail, or you are alluding to the fact they've committed a crime, and the fact now that we know that Nolan did not survive being out there at Horn Island, and you never submitted that to law enforcement, there's a potential that that's tampering with evidence. If you have evidence of a crime and you're withholding that from law enforcement, and you knowingly and intentionally are doing that, that could be very problematic for a person who claimed to be a witness.
No. Morally, it's wrong, but there is no duty under the law that you have to report yourself as a witness, that you have to volunteer information. You can stand on the side of a pool and watch somebody drown and do nothing unless you have a fiduciary capacity. And it's not a crime in our jurisprudence. So nothing is compelling her under the law to come forward. However, interesting, she did post it. She did identify herself. She did say she was going to police, and that would be my first line of cross. Did you take this to the police? And if she said no, all HELL break out in that courtroom. If you have information like this and you don't go to the police, Nancy, fur would fly. Fur would fly. You ever seen a dog fight? That's what I mean by that. Fur would fly. So that would be a line of cross-exam. Hold on, something else. Before I go out to Susan Hendricks, Jeff Shetler, and Ben Dobrin, now information that there is, in fact, a criminal investigation.
Hearing that somebody who has an inside source is saying the DA's office in Mississippi is now looking at the Nolan Wells case as a criminal investigation and no longer an accidental drowning. Now, we can only pray that this is true. Obviously, we can't celebrate. We can't get excited at all because I have not seen Ben Crump announce this. It is not being reported by any other major media sources, but there are rumblings.
From Sam Crouppen. All right. I would like to point out that his source is a, quote, little birdie. Little birdies are saying that an inside source says the DA's office is now looking into the Nolan Wells as a criminal investigation. I can't put that up on the stand. Susan Hendricks joining me, investigative journalist and author of Down the Hill, My Descent into the Double Murder in Delphi. Susan, you get laughed out of court if your witness said, a little birdie told me, number one, that's hearsay, but a little birdie?
Yeah, exactly. It makes me wonder, did that woman, those text messages about some sort of altercation, is the grand jury analyzing this as we speak? Because finally the DA came out and said, look, I can't release anything that's going on, but let it be clear, and I'm paraphrasing, that we are investigating this with a grand jury.
Susan Hendricks, you're absolutely right. She states most recently, this is the elected district attorney, my obligation and commitment is to present the grand jury with all the evidence collected in the case in order for them to reach a decision based on a thorough investigation, complete evidence presentation, the actual truth, and an understanding of the law. I'm obligated to do so in keeping with the law and the rules of the court. She goes on to state, I stand firmly on the rule of law and my ethical obligation. That is what the people of Jackson County elected me to do. I will present the grand jury with a thorough, complete, and fair investigation into the death of Nolan Wells. Now, is there a criminal investigation? According to some sources, there is. We keep hearing there is no criminal investigation. To Dave Mack, Crime Stories investigative reporter, what is the truth of it tonight?
Nancy, it hasn't been announced that there's a criminal investigation, but it just stands to reason that they are doing a full investigation into the death of Nolan Wells. At this point, we don't have a cause of death, Nancy. They have not released the reports on the autopsy that was done by the state, completed weeks ago. We don't know anything. Nothing's been released. So whether they're doing a criminal investigation or not, I think it stands to reason they are investigating to every piece of evidence they can find to determine what happened and what they can present, they being investigators, to the grand jury.
Rumors don't arrive with a name attached. Official statements do. So that's exactly where we're headed. Because here's the fundamental problem with a little birdie. You cannot put it back on the stand. You cannot press it on what it actually observed, or how it came to know what it's claiming, or why it waited 6 weeks to say any of it. An anonymous source is designed to shield the person delivering the claim, not the person that claim is aimed at. So before another theory gets constructed on top of a source that nobody can identify, we are going directly to the one office in this entire case that carries the actual authority to define what is true and what isn't. The district attorney, speaking for herself, on the record, not relayed through someone else's interpretation of what she meant. What comes out of her mouth next either puts the brakes on all of this, or it doesn't. But either way, it represents the most direct contact with verifiable fact that this case has offered the public in 6 weeks. It deserves to be heard completely, not handed off to a panel to debate before you've even processed it yourself. But that still isn't where tonight concludes. Because buried underneath every single theory this case has generated, the altercation claim, the forensic uncertainty, the unconfirmed criminal investigation, there is one foundational question that has never been answered with actual evidence. Where was Nolan Wells at 5 o'clock that evening? At 6? Was he still standing on that island? Or had he already left with the rest of the group? That question is about to be fought out in real time between two people who have arrived at completely opposite conclusions about this case. And neither one has any intention of giving ground. One of them is about to issue a challenge that is direct and public. If you can put him on that island at that hour, then prove it. Lay it out right now. Here's what I'm asking you to do as you watch this next exchange. Don't measure it by who comes across as more certain. Measure it by who is actually producing something concrete, a timestamp, a location record, a documented name, a piece of physical evidence, and who is simply reasserting a conclusion they walked in with. Because when this exchange is finished, one of them is going to be standing there with nothing to show for their position except how firmly they believed it. And in a case where an 18-year-old lost his life, firmly believing something is not the same as being able to prove it.
I understand the public's urgency to know what happened to Nolan, but we are not taking time for time's sake. We are taking the time required to complete the work this investigation demands. Since Nolan was reported missing, local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies have worked around the clock investigating what happened to him. Every piece of evidence must be examined. Every credible lead must be followed to its conclusion. Every witness interview must be analyzed in context of all other evidence. The pressure for answers does not change what the work requires. Our responsibility to Nolan and our community is to complete this investigation thoroughly, carefully, without compromise, supported by the evidence and worthy of the confidence of the people we serve. I also understand that many people have questions about why more information has not been released publicly. In Mississippi, the rules of professional conduct restrict the information a prosecutor can release during an investigation. Our restraint in communicating facts and evidence is not an effort to keep the truth from the public. It is an effort to protect the integrity of this investigation in the grand jury proceeding.
And tonight, more rumblings that the wrong boat was searched.
The MDMR report states that the searched vessel was called a tied craft, right? On July 8th. But witnesses show he used a tied line boat on July 4th. In the MDMR report, right down at the bottom in the yellow, it says tied craft, not tied line.
From Sam Crouppen to Ben Dobrin, emergency response diving instructor and trainer. Ben, thank you for being with us. What about the mistake in the name of the boat if it was in fact a mistake? And could that explain any problem in getting GPS information?
Well, absolutely, because they're two different brands of boats. It's like saying, I'm going to search a Ford, and then you go out and search a Chevrolet in a car. They're very different brands of boats. And so if they were searching the wrong boat, then any information on that boat would be the wrong information. So if you're going after the GPS plotter on the Chevrolet, but you want the GPS plotter off of the Ford, they have no bearing. And so if you're searching the incorrect boat, you have incorrect evidence.
To Brandon Tatum, star of The Officer Tatum on YouTube, we just saw some video from your show. And I'm trying to figure out, among other things, what time and day, if you have a time and a date stamp on that, that seemingly shows the Triton with a lot of people on it leaving the island, leaving Horn Island. Do you have a time stamp on that?
I don't have the timestamp. I can ask them to see if they can get it to me. When I watched this video and they presented it to me, this was during the time that the CETO call was occurring. So it had to have been right around that time. You could see Wyatt on the boat on the phone. And so this is how it was presented to me. And just to kind of answer your question about the boat searches, you know, it's partially irrelevant depending on the investigation and the interviews that they've done. There is no indication that there was a crime committed on any one of these boats. When you have 60 people that have already given statements to law enforcement, you have the young men that I interviewed that were on their boat that left the island, and then you have people that saw Nolan on the island after they had left. It's no indication that Nolan was on any one of those boats at any point in time and that a murder occurred on those boats. So regardless if they searched them or not, you know, it was offered up for them to use a cadaver dog, but that never occurred. And so I don't really think that the boat situation or search is significant. The boys submitted their Life 360, which is how they got a GPS tracking of when they left the island and how they got from point A to point B, where they docked and all of those things. So all of the information has been concluded, or at least have been explored, and it didn't appear that there's any foul play on any one of the boats.
Okay. Officer Tatum, I respect everything that you just said. But to have a witness tell me it's true because I said so and because my friends say so, that doesn't mean it's true to me.
This is GPS.
It could be true.
They provided
GPS. That doesn't tell me what happened to Nolan. Just because they got GPS,
they provided Life 360.
Came back.
They provided Life 360. They provided the CETO call, and you can put those two things together and say, okay, the timeline matches. And if they left at 4:30, they were already gone. All three boats that came out were already gone when Nolan was last seen. So now you have a timeline that's consistent with evidence that they presented.
Right there. I was going with you until you said the time Nolan was last seen. Because their GPS data, I'm sure, is correct. And their Life 360 data, I'm sure, is correct. I'm not arguing with the technology. But what happened just before that? Where was Nolan when they're leaving the island? If you can place him on that island at 5 or 6 o'clock, please do it. And then I will turn attention elsewhere. I'm not trying to hang your friends, the people that you have interviewed. And I respect that you believe them, and maybe you're right. If he can be placed on that island at 5 or 6 o'clock, then they're in the clear. But I want to know who's placing them there, him there, and how.
Reports have come out that there's two reliable witnesses. TMZ reported on this. They said they saw Nolan a little bit before 6 p.m. There was also the young lady, Katie, who sent text messages to one of the boys that I interviewed. I saw the text messages where she alluded to the fact that she did not see Nolan get on the boat. She heard the boys yelling for Nolan to get on the boat. So Nolan never got back on the boat that he came on. So you have the boats leaving. You have a CETO call. You have testimony from everybody on the boat. And all of those things have to be taken in consideration. Also, they have already spoke to law enforcement about this. Them talking to me in the interview is them just telling the world what they told law enforcement. If there was any indication whatsoever that he was on the boat based on the testimony that was given from the boys or anybody else, even this new witness that have come forward, I think that there would be a significant investigation leading to an immediate arrest. But they clearly don't have any clear evidence that there is a crime that is committed and especially a crime that was committed from the boys that I interviewed. I can't speak for everybody else, but I know the young men that I talked to, they were gone. There's no indication that Nolan was on the boat whatsoever. They're giving statements. Katie gave a statement. Even this person is claiming that they saw Nolan get into a fist fight. It appears that this person is claiming that the fight has happened after Wyatt and the rest of them had left on the boat.